Previously on Pretty Little Liars.
Through my head, run through my head. Okay, guys, who wants a heated rivalry video? Literally just one person. One person tell me they want a heated rivalry video, and I will make one. Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a very long awaited video. Everyone has been asking for this video because I said I was going to do it way back when I posted my Aria is A theory video. You can go and watch that one if you want to see kind of all the evidence and what I thought and the theories and everything about could Aria have been A, was she supposed to be A, all of that stuff. And today we're doing it again, but this time we're going to be talking about Wren Kingston. So we're going to go through episode by episode, talk about all the, you know, supposed evidence towards him being A, and yeah, just kind of have a chit chat about would it have worked, should they have made him A, and I would love to know what you guys think. So let me know down below, do you think Wren should have been A? Did you ever think that he was A? Also, I have a Patreon where we are watching Pretty Little Liars, rewatching it weekly over there. So there are 4 episodes up so far, the first 4 episodes of season 1, and I kind of like watch it along with you guys and tell you fun facts and things like behind the scenes stuff, and that's been super fun. So you can go over there and subscribe for that. But yeah, let's get into it. Is or should Wren have been A? Okay guys, we're locking in and class is in session. Today's topic, Wren Kingston. So first, I guess just a little refresher on Wren. So we first meet Wren in the first episode of season 1. He is an OG. He is played by Julian Morris, and yeah, like I said, he's called Wren Kingston. He is British, and we are introduced to him as Melissa's fiance, the Doctor. Instantly, in that first episode, we see that him and Spencer have a bit of a connection, and they kind of, you know, flirt with each other, and they end up kissing in the second episode. And so it's kind of the aftermath of all of that, and Wren becomes like, I would say he's like somewhat of a mainstay. He doesn't appear in that many episodes, like in the grand scheme of things. So Pretty Little Liars as a whole, obviously ran for 7 seasons, and there are 160 episodes. And Julian Morris appears as Wren in 22 of those episodes. So in the grand scheme, obviously it's not a lot, but then you have like Cece. She only appears in, I think, 19 episodes. So a lot of the kind of like bigger, like the more memorable characters, it's funny because they actually aren't in that many episodes, like in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, Wren only appears in 22 episodes. I think like season 5, he doesn't appear at all. But he's pretty consistent in the first season. Less so in the second. We see quite a bit of him in the third season, and then yeah, fifth season I think he completely disappears. And I think the 6th season as well, and then he comes back for like 2 episodes in season 7. So he's a bit of a in and out character. I don't think that necessarily is like pro or con him being A, to be fair, because like I said, Cece was in 19 episodes and she ended up being A, but then you have Mona, who I think was in 90 episodes or maybe 100 episodes, and she was also A. So it really is just like, you know, flip-flop there. I don't think that really leans to it either way, but that is how many episodes that he was in. Obviously, the most of his time is spent within the Hastings world, and a lot of his plots tend to be centered around his connection with Spencer. But then we do also see him interact with Hannah, and obviously he's a doctor, but then he goes and he works at Radley, so he kind of gets involved in other ways as well. And I feel like, obviously we're going to talk about it, but he didn't really start to become suspicious until he came back for season 3, when he started working at Radley. I feel like that's when they really started dropping the hints that he could have been involved, but then kind of never went anywhere, which was a little bit weird. But yeah, we're going to obviously talk about all that. So like I said, Wren is a mainstay. He is also from the books. So in the books, he is still Melissa's fiance, still, you know, basically leaves her to be with Spencer, but he is British Korean in the books, and he is called Wren Kim instead of Wren Kingston. So that was a change they made for the show. And I don't know, I think it would have been, I love Julian Morris and I think he's great as Wren, but I do think it would have been fun to have that like Korean representation in the show, and to see, you know, it would have been nice for them to have casted a Korean actor to obviously play him and like be in a show that huge. Like I feel like that would have been really cool. But anyway, I digress. So that's kind of, the rundown on who Wren Kingston is as a character. So now we're going to go through kind of, episode by episode that he's in and go through some of the evidence. So this is kind of a mixture of things that I noticed throughout the show, you know, kind of like went back and watched the episodes that he was in. I also asked like you guys on Reddit, what were some of the evidence that you saw, things that you remembered that you were like, that made him suspicious. So there was a bit of that as well. So it's kind of like a little group effort. Like you gotta be in the Pretty Little Lies Reddit, because I'm in there. Like I am constantly lurking in the Pretty Little Lies Reddit. First off, obviously we're going to start with his first appearance, which is the pilot, episode 1 of season 1. And we have that Wren smokes, and obviously people find that a little bit suspicious. Well, I guess a little bit hypocritical, because he is a doctor, that he then smokes, and he says, you know, Melissa doesn't have to know everything, kind of, I guess hinting that he keeps other secrets from her, maybe. And Spencer says to him, she says, oh, you are a med student, right? I guess that also, people think that could have been foreshadowing to hints that he isn't a real doctor.
You're a med student, right? Does my sister know you smoke?
Does she have to know everything?
I think that's definitely the biggest theory when it comes to Wren being A, is that if that was the case, he wouldn't be a real doctor. I guess kind of like what they did with Elliot Rollins in season 7, like he pretended to be a doctor. So I guess it kind of would have been like that, maybe would have been interesting. Because he is at the hospital and stuff, but I mean, it would be so easy. Like anyone, I think, could sneak into Radley at this point. So that wouldn't be too out of the realm possibility that he could have pretended to be a doctor and worked at Radley. And then also something that I noticed in the pilot is that Wren attends Melissa's funeral. Wren attends Alison's funeral, like with Melissa. I'm pretty sure he attends with Melissa, but you can't see Melissa. I don't know if that is just how it happened with the edits that they chose. You just can't see her, or if Troy DeVito just wasn't there on that day. But I'm assuming he sat next to Melissa, but you can see him like clear as day sitting in the aisles for Alison's funeral, which I did think was a weird choice, because like they also, I don't think they're sitting with the Hastings either. They're not like sitting with who Peter and Veronica are supposed to be. They were played by different actors in the pilot, but it's supposed to be them. So they're not sitting with them, which was kind of weird. And I don't know, I just felt that Melissa going to Alison's funeral would have been a weird thing for her to do anyway, because she literally hated her guts. But I guess also she thought that she had buried her alive, so maybe she was just trying to show face. But like going to the funeral of the girl that you buried is crazy work. And for her to bring Wren, I guess would be like an emotional support thing, but he literally didn't know Alison, only just moved in a few days ago. Like, I don't know, I thought it was like kind of weird for him to be there. So I wonder if they had sat him there purposefully so that you could see him, for that to maybe go on to mean something, or if it was just he's here in Vancouver filming, so we'll just have him sit in the audience. Then episode 2, the Jenna thing, Wren says, I didn't grow up in a family like yours, and the way it's framed in the scene is that he's saying, oh, I didn't grow up with a family that had loads of money, or, you know, that kind of pressure to succeed, but you could, had they made him like, you know, evil or whatever, you could have reinterpreted that as him maybe having a more traumatic childhood, or, you know, I didn't grow up in a family like yours, as in, you know, like Alex Drake kind of motive, like I didn't have a family at all.
You know, I didn't grow up in a family like yours, so I don't know that kind of pressure.
And that drive had to come from somewhere.
Yeah, came from me. My life has been my choice.
We're going to talk a little bit later, he does mention his dad, but we never see anyone that's related to him, so it would have been very easy to come up with a whole backstory for him, because we never really see any of it other than the small little things that he says. But they could have been like, well, he was lying. and come up with this whole elaborate backstory for him. That would have been interesting. Also, something to note that we're going to talk about a little bit later is that he orders a vodka soda in this episode.
Yeah, I actually will have a vodka soda.
Which is later something that we see A drinking, but I don't know if that's really works because Spencer's the one that technically orders it. Like, she says a vodka soda, and then he obviously orders it because he knew that she wanted it. So it's like, did he really want it, or did he just order it because she wanted it? So that one I feel like is a little more of a stretch in terms of evidence. So then in episode 4, Can You Hear Me Now? One of the big plots of that episode is that the liars all block unknown numbers so that A isn't able to text them, and Wren mentions to Spencer, he's like, oh, I was trying to call you, but you've blocked my number.
I tried calling you, but you're blocking my number.
No. Oh, no, I wasn't blocking you.
Like, to me, I just kind of see this as she didn't have his number saved, because why would she? And also, yeah, like, that to me that makes sense. Like, she didn't have his number saved, so it blocked his calls. Because if she did have his number saved, then that would mean he would have to have a phone that she, like, his like a phone that he didn't have a number saved. Like, I don't even know how to explain this. Basically, either way, it doesn't make sense to me. Because either obviously she just didn't have his number saved, which would make sense, or he was trying to text her from, like, the A phone. Is that what people are saying? Like, oh, well, Spencer was blocking A's number, so obviously his number being blocked means that he's A. But it was like, no, she just was blocking numbers she didn't have saved. So either she didn't have his number saved, which makes sense, or she did have his number saved, but he was trying to ring her from a secret phone. I don't know. This one, to me, I don't get it in terms of the evidence. It doesn't make... I just feel like this one doesn't make sense. And then when, you know, obviously he comes over and he's drunk, Spencer says to him, why did you feel like you had to get drunk to, you know, speak to my dad, and, you know, why are you kind of scared of him? And Wren says complex psychological reasons.
Why do you think you had to get drunk to talk to my father?
For many complex psychological reasons.
And so that maybe, you know, is kind of hinting to that he has issues with his dad, and he doesn't really kind of know how to navigate that sort of relationship, which, like I said, is something we are going to talk about a little more later. But this is kind of more evidence towards that he probably didn't have the best home life growing up. He also says that what he's been drinking is scotch, and we see A drinking scotch. But again, you know, because Jason also drinks scotch, Peter Hastings drinks scotch, so does Byron. You know, it's a drink that comes up a lot in the show, so I struggle to pinpoint that to a specific thing. Another, like, big one that people use is that in that episode, A writes the message on Spencer's mirror, and obviously was in Spencer's house, tidied up the plant, did the note on the mirror, and then was in the wardrobe or the closet filming the girls as they see the A message. So people were saying, well, Wren literally breaks into Spencer's house this episode, so it shows that he could do that. And so he went in, obviously he broke it again, he left the message, he was already at the house, you know, he knew Spencer would be out, kind of thing, so that's when he went. But I'm like, this literally would make no sense. I'm sorry, like I feel like I'm no fun for these like evidence and theory ones. It's like the Aria one, I'm just constantly like, this doesn't make sense, like this evidence just doesn't make sense, guys. Because so the timeline of events of this evening, Wren breaks into Spencer's house and sees her there. They chat, you know, he breaks the pot, they almost kiss, and she says, I'm gonna drive you home because you're drunk. So she drives him home, which means his car, or unless she drove in, no, she drove in his car, okay, so that's fine. So she gets in his car with him, drives him back to the Edgewood Motor Court, which is where he's staying, the motel, and they kiss. Hannah is there. Hannah brings Spencer back home. They get home. By the time they're home, we obviously don't know how far of a drive the Edgewood Motor Court is. I'm going to say it's like maybe 10-15 minutes outside of like where they are, because obviously, you know, Spencer takes Toby there. Like, I don't think it's super far away. We're not talking like Ravenswood, which is like an hour or, you know, 3 hours away or whatever. So yeah, so Hannah picks Spencer up. They go straight back to Spencer's house. Like, they don't go anywhere else. We know they go from the Edgewood Motor Court to Spencer's house, which, let's call that a 15-minute drive. Wren goes inside. We see him. He kisses Spencer. He goes inside. So for him to have been the one that did this, he would have had to have gotten back in his car. Also, he would have had to have been faking being drunk. Let's just get that out of the way. He would have either have done this drunk and been so meticulous with how he put the plant back together and wrote on the wall and, like, you know, hid in that. Like, he would not have been able to do that drunk if he was the same level of drunk that we saw him. So for that to have worked, one, he would have had to have been faking that entire thing, and he would have had to have been stone cold sober. Two, he would have had to have gotten in his car and beaten, like, Hannah and Spencer home by a lot. Say it's a 15-minute drive, like, he would have had to have gotten in his car, bearing in mind them not see him as well, because Hannah's parked right there. So he would have had to have come back out of his motel room without them seeing, gotten in his car, taken his car back to the Hastings house. But obviously they don't mention seeing anybody's car, so he would have had to have parked further down the street, probably, because as we know, the Hastings house, the only place you can park is right at the front, by the gate, where Alison's house is. So nobody's parking there, like, surely. And so that he would have had to have parked somewhere they wouldn't have seen his car, gotten out of his car, ran into the Hastings house, broken in again, or I guess Spencer hadn't had time to fix the door yet, so just gone in the door, gathered up the whole, like, all the soil, all that stuff, put it on the table, then gone upstairs, gotten the lipstick, which he also would have had to have known that it was jungle red, it was Alison's colour, and done the message, then hidden in the wardrobe and filmed the whole thing. I hope that made sense in the way that I tried to explain it, because you know what, it doesn't make sense, because none of it makes sense, because it just can't have happened. Like, there's just no way. There's no way that he could have done this, because the fundamental thing is he could not have gotten back there before then. Even if he ran every red light, like, and was, like, over the speed limit, okay, maybe he could have gotten back in, like, 10 minutes compared to the 15 or 20 that they did. But then he had to do all that shit in that time before they come back through the door. There's just no way. I'm sorry, there's just no way. Debunked. So that's actually him done for the rest of the season. He's only in the first 4 episodes. And also in the 3rd episode, I didn't really find anything of note that he did. Spencer just goes to visit him in Philly, and kind of asks him to, you know, help clear her name sort of thing. But I didn't find that he kind of said anything suspicious or weird or dodgy. So then he next appears in season 2. And is kind of, like, wrapped up into the same thing. Like, episodes 1 and 2, we see him helping Melissa, because she is trying to get medical supplies for Ian, who she, you know, still believes is alive. And so she kind of calls in a favour from Wren. It's kind of like, you owe me. And so that's what he's doing in these first 2 episodes. And Spencer talks to him and tries to kind of figure out what's happening.
Why did you help her?
Honestly. Because I feel partly responsible for Melissa charging back to Ian. How could I not help?
So when people see this, they think that this was his way of maybe confirming that Ian was dead, if he was, you know, a part of the NAT club kind of thing, making sure that Ian was dead because Ian was kind of blackmailing all of them, or, you know, if he was working with Mona, again, feeding that information back to Mona that Ian was dead, or trying to use it as a way to worm his way back in with the Hastings, maybe. But for me, it just kind of makes sense that Wren would feel guilty. Like, he would feel guilty about how things ended with him and Melissa, and he would have then seen that she got married and was going to have a baby and would have been like, that's great. Like, you know, now the guilt's kind of lifted because she's moved on, and now her husband is potentially dead or, you know, severely injured. To me, it makes sense that if she came to him and asked him for help, he would feel bad and he would help her, rather than it being for like an ulterior motive. Then I would say this is probably the biggest piece of Wren is evidence, and it is the spelling of nosy bitches die, which is the message that leaves for Dr. Sullivan on her wall. And because nosy is spelled the British way with an E in it, people were like, well, somebody who's British must have written this, and who's the only person who's British? Wren Kingston. Yes, ma'am. I can't even deny this one. Like, this makes total sense to me. I'm like, yeah. Yep, British spelling, Wren, makes sense. I always thought the idea of it being a Wren Mona team would have been really interesting. Not necessarily in these first 2 seasons, because I think Mona being herself, like, it's still being very high school and very, you know, bitchy, you know, girl group kind of thing. To me, that works perfectly for season 1 and 2. But I do think it would have been interesting if going into season 3, when he started treating her, if she kind of recruited him into the game and it, like, they kind of became a bit of a team. I always think that would have been fun to have like 2 people truly be rather than just one, because then you would have had kind of like a ghost face reveal where it's like the 2 of them together. I always think that would have been more fun than just having the head honcho and then them just kind of blackmailing people and getting people to do stuff for them. I think it would have been fun if we had like a true double because if you watched my video, if you haven't, go over and see it. I'm literally so proud of this video. It took me probably over a year to write, to be honest. And it's how I would have ended Pretty Little Liars. And in that, so I had Mona, obviously, as the original and then when it got to the Cece reveal, I actually changed it to be the Wren reveal. And I had it that he was kind of the main but his partner was Cece. And they were like together properly. Like, he was the black hoodie, she was the red coat, and they were both kind of equally as involved in things. And that was kind of the big reveal that I had for midway through season 6. So I always loved the idea of Wren being or even just a guy being I think would have been really fun. We never saw that. Like, all of the reveals were girls. So I think having a guy be like properly and not just a little minion of I think would have been really interesting. But if you want to see who I had as my like Uber AD final for like the season 7 finale, go and watch that video. Tell me what you think. But yeah, nosy bitches die, British spelling. Like, to me this makes perfect sense. I'm like, yeah, I see why everyone was like, this, it's got to be Wren, obviously. Okay, so then episode 8, you can see like the sun is setting. They end up going to, this is the episode where they go to the morgue when they're dressed in their cute little candy stripe outfits. And people kind of pointing out that obviously Wren, as a doctor at the hospital, would have access to the morgue. So he could have gone in, you know, at the end of the episode where you see Ace sit up, like that could have easily have been him. Or he could have gone in to look at Alison's records, like all that stuff. He would have, obviously, an access card for that, and no one would question why he was down there because he works for the hospital. And within that, because we saw him getting medicine for Melissa, it's also very easy to think, oh, well, he could have gotten the steroids that are then injected into Emily's medication, into Emily's cream, because they never really said, oh, how did Mona get that strong of like medication to then put into Emily's pain cream? Like, how did she even get that? Whereas if it was Wren sourced the medication, he put it into the cream, and then obviously Mona just planted the cream for Emily to find, that would kind of make more sense. Within that whole storyline with Emily as well, you know, they make it seem like he's the good guy because he doesn't end up telling Wayne about the steroid use, because Emily kind of begs him not to. So you think, oh, you know, that's nice of him, like he didn't tell her secret or whatever. But that like completely goes against obviously his, like we're obviously rooting for Emily. We don't want her to get sent away, like, you know, we don't want her to get in trouble. So we're like, we don't want him to tell. But in, like, if this was real life, he would obviously be really violating his code of conduct as a doctor. Like, that's something he definitely should have said. And he doesn't. And it's kind of framed as, oh, well, he's just a nice guy, you know, he's just looking out for the girls and Spencer's friend. But if he was like, in this scenario, he wouldn't want Emily to leave. He wouldn't want Emily being shipped off to Texas, because then he could mess with her and the group of them as a whole, as like, you know, all 4 of them. So it makes sense in that, like, why he would keep it to himself, because he doesn't want Emily getting in trouble either. Then in episode 10, I don't think he's in this episode, but this is the episode where Emily gets the massage. And oh my god, look at this. This is like ridiculous. And it kind of could make sense for it to have been Wren in this scene, because firstly he's an adult, which, like, ill, but the reality of it is that he is an adult, so it would make sense for him to maybe be able to pose that he worked there. So it would have made sense that maybe he would have been able to get into that place, or we never really see where it is that she went, but yeah, he could have been like, oh, I'm here for, you know, to talk to someone about physiotherapy, or, you know, whatever, because he's, you know, a doctor. Like, that maybe could have worked. Whereas it being Lucas never really made sense to me. I know that Mona kind of like was blackmailing him to do stuff, but the idea that at this massage clinic, Lucas just strolled in as a teenager and was able to just kind of walk around and like go in there and spend all that time in there with Emily, like, that doesn't really make any sense. Whereas I guess if Wren went in there, he could be like, oh, I'm her, you know, physical therapist, like, I'm just gonna have a meeting. I don't know, even that doesn't really make any sense. But to me, it being Lucas kind of felt always like a little bit of a cop-out, because they kind of would always be like, oh, that was Lucas, or oh, Mona was blackmailing him to do this, Mona was blackmailing him to do that. But in reality, like, we never really see him do anything dodgy. They just kind of say that he did, but no one ever asks him about it. Like, Hannah never says, why did you do that? Like, why did you go and massage Emily? Like, what a weird thing for you to do. I don't know. I just felt like it was weird for him to do that, because he didn't have any connection to Emily specifically as well. Yeah, I don't know. I always found it weird that it was Lucas. It didn't really make any sense to me. So it being Wren maybe would have made, you know, a little more sense. And also, Wren, obviously, we see him massage Spencer in the first episode. I'm getting like PTSD, like flashbacks to the bursa sack, you know what I mean? So he had done that. We've seen him do that. And obviously she, like, in the episode is like, oh, that, you know, feels great. And then he like, oh my god. And then he comes in the one after and he's like, what does he say? He's like, fancy another rub or some shit. Freak. Anyway, but we've kind of seen him do this. So, and I guess because he's like a doctor, maybe he did physiotherapy, like a course in physiotherapy or something, or he just happens to be good at massages. I don't know. I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty of that. But it would then make sense for him to be able to massage Emily and her not to notice that it felt weird, because he could do it properly. Whereas Lucas, like, why did he... Do you know what I mean? Like, when she's laying there, obviously she couldn't see him, but also, would she not think it was weird that, like, her masseuse had, like, trainers on, or whatever he was wearing, like black boots? Was she not, like, looking down, you know, like that episode of Friends where Phoebe... Well, there's two, actually. The one where she wears, like, the jewellery to try and flirt with the guy because he only sees her feet. But then also when Rachel recognises Phoebe's trainers and, like, figures out that it's her. Like, would that a similar thing not have happened? Would Emily not have looked down and been like, why has my massage lady got these weird, like, boots on, like A-style boots? And also, why did she not think this feels weird? Like, if you go and have a massage, you're kind of expecting the person to to know what they're doing. So are we supposed to believe that Lucas as a teenager is good enough at massaging someone to trick Emily into thinking he was an actual masseuse? Like, she never think like, well, this feels a little bit weird, because he would have just been guessing. Whereas if it had been Wren, who we have established can massage a bursa sack, then that would have made more sense. Do you know what I'm trying to say? This is the most ridiculous thing ever. I'm like sitting here being like, no, but like it really would have made sense for like the creepy older doctor to have massaged this teenager rather than another teenager. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. None of this show makes any sense. Me like sitting here trying to make any kind of logical explanation for anything that happens in this show. Good God. So then, episode 12 of season 2. Love this episode. This episode, I'm doing, spoiler alert, I'm doing a ranking of every episode of Pretty Little Liars. If you haven't seen, ages ago, oh my gosh, maybe like 2 years ago, 3 years ago now? That's crazy. That's actually nuts. I ranked every single episode of Gossip Girl, all 121 episodes from worst to best. Literally went through, it wasn't a tier list, it was literally from 121 all the way up. I did every single episode. And then, you know, obviously you saw what my favourite episode is. So, for that, I'm doing that again. But I'm doing it with Pretty Little Liars. It's taking a long time. Because obviously there's 160 episodes of Pretty Little Liars. So there's a lot to go through. But, yeah, spoiler for that video. Over My Dead Body, 2x12 is going to be very high on that list. I adore this episode. I think it's so, so fun. So dramatic. Love the outfits. Everything about this episode is so good. Oh my god, everything about this episode is so good. I love it. Norman Buckley, you did your big one with this. Such a good episode. So he does such good episodes. Like, there's Pretty Little Liars is really good in that they would have directors come back for multiple episodes. Like, they really loved doing that, like having people return. And Norman Buckley is the most recurring director on Pretty Little Liars. So Norman Buckley did 23 episodes of Pretty Little Liars, directed 23 episodes. Oh my gosh, he directed one more episode than Wren was in the entire show. But anyway, yeah, Norman Buckley did 23 episodes of the 160 that we saw. So he is the most reoccurring director. And I can always tell. I can always tell when it is a Norman Buckley episode. I think he just has such a good vision of this show. And, you know, when you hear him talk about it and in interviews and stuff, and I was lucky enough to be able to interview, he answered a few questions for me for my book. And he was so lovely and so sweet. And just reading his answers about the show and how he saw the characters and his process was so, so interesting. And I just love him. I think he's an incredible director. He also did one of my favourite episodes of Gossip Girl of all time, which is The Goodbye Gossip Girl, the season 2 finale, I think. Incredible episode of TV, and he directed that as well, which I didn't even realise at the time, which of course he did. So good. He also did a couple of episodes of 90210. He did, I think some of the OC as well. Like, he has done a lot of teen drama work. And if you're watching an episode of Pretty Little Liars and it says directed by Norman Buckley, that like flashes up, you know you're gonna be in for a good episode of Pretty Little Liars. So, so good. He's doing Sweet Magnolias at the minute, which I really like. I've never talked about it on my channel because I feel like it doesn't really fit in with the shows I talk about, but I really think he does an amazing job on that as well. Which is so funny because he is obviously directing Joanna in that show, and he also, you know, had seen her on Gossip Girl and also in Privileged. So Privileged is a show, that's such a tangent. Privileged is a show that Lucy Hale did just before Pretty Little Liars aired, and she was in it with Joanna. And so it's so cool because Norman directed an episode of that. So we saw Lucy pre-Pretty Little Liars, then he obviously directed her in Pretty Little Liars, and he directed an episode of Life Sentence, which was a show that she did after Pretty Little Liars. So I love that like he kind of has followed Lucy Hale's career a little bit, and same with Joanna. Like, because he obviously like is with Sweet Magnolias now and directed that episode of Privileged almost 20 years ago now, which is so crazy. Anyway, he's a legend. All of that to say, shout out to Norman Buckley. He knows how to direct an episode of Pretty Little Liars. Love it. Love him. Anyway, back to the episode. Back to Wren, which is actually what this video is about. Lock in, remember. So yeah, episode 12, Over My Dead Body, mid-season finale of season 2. And in that, all the girls get their dolls, and the dolls kind of give them a task to do. And Spencer's task is that she has to break up with Toby. Well, keep Toby safe, and the only way to do that is to break up with him. Because A had cut his brakes, I think, that morning. And so the only way to keep him safe is to break up with him. And this would make sense for this to have been Wren, because it's kind of the perfect motive. I think this definitely makes sense for this to have been something Wren would have wanted, because he has obviously always been kind of infatuated with Spencer, and at this time he was definitely on the outs with her, sort of. You know, she'd been dating Toby for a long time at this point. He didn't really have a role in her life, but had seen her, you know, obviously when Emily was in hospital and whatever. And so it would make sense for him to be jealous and to want to get back in with her. And so as forcing her to break up with Toby leaves her single, but then also gives him the opportunity to like swoop in when she's heartbroken and kind of save the day, which is exactly what happens. You know, he sees her crying outside of the church after she's just broken up with Toby, and so he goes over and, you know, takes her home, and she, you know, they end up kissing before she goes to Hannah's dad's wedding.
I'm desperate to kiss you.
So if that was his plan, it would have worked perfectly, because she went like straight back to him after having broken up with Toby. Then the next episode, episode 13, is The First Secret. It's our flashback episode, and Wren is not in this episode. But in this episode, Emily, you know, Ben ends up telling people at school that he and Emily had slept together, and she kind of just didn't deny it, but she tells Alison later on that it's not true. And as they're kind of walking along, you know, Alison brings it up and she says, oh, I know a doctor who can get you birth control without telling your parents, like if since you and Ben are sleeping together now. And that's when Emily says, oh, we're not actually sleeping together, like he just told people that we were, and you know, whatever.
I know a doctor if you want to go on the pill. He'll see you without telling your mom.
So yeah, like that never went anywhere. But I think it would have been interesting if that had been Wren, because I don't really know the timeline of Wren. This is why I think he would have been a great character to truly make into a villain, because we don't know a lot about him. So then you're able to, like, as a writer, they could have gone and just filled in those gaps. Because he's with Melissa when we meet them in the pilot, but we don't know what he was doing the summer that Alison disappeared, because Melissa was with Ian then. So if it had been, you know, he was a doctor, or he was training to be a doctor, and so he was able to get birth control, like, you know, he did that as a favour for Alison. I don't know how he would have known her, but, you know. Or if Wren had been friends with Wilden, or Ian, and because obviously we know that Wilden was sleeping with Alison. Disgusting. Jail. Sleeping with Wilden, fate worse than death, honestly. So then, knowing that, it maybe would have made sense if Wren was friends with Wilden, and Wilden had said to him, I'm dating this girl, and we are sleeping, like, I need to get her birth control, but she doesn't want to go and get it herself, because then her parents would find out, whatever, because she's underage. Freaks, all of you. All the men in Rosewood, freaks. If he was friends with Wren, and Wren was training to be a doctor, or, you know, had access to that medication, he could have then gotten it for Wilden, and Wilden could have given it to Alison, or, you know, he could have said, oh, go to Wren. Like, he could have said to Alison, go to Wren will get it for you. I think that would have been interesting to find out he was that doctor. So yeah, it's never confirmed to be him, but a doctor that kind of bends the rules that we never hear about again. Like, that could have easily have been Wren that Alison was talking about. Then the next time we end up seeing Wren in season 2 is episode 17. Is this the blonde leading the blind? Maybe. But this is the episode where Toby falls off scaffolding. So 2x12, like I'd mentioned, that was when A cut his brakes and he ended up getting into like the car crash, but he was fine. This time, because because Spencer had kissed Toby, A loosened the bolts on the scaffolding. Toby ends up falling and breaking his leg. Poor Toby. Toby goes through so much in this show. He has like 3 car crashes, also crashes his motorbike, gets pushed off the scaffolding. His leg is in a cast twice, I'm pretty sure, in this show. His house gets blown up. He goes through it in this show, like, that poor man. Anyway, so, and then, oh my god, and when he eats the gummies, like Spencer's weed gummies, and then, oh my god, bless him, bless his soul, poor Toby Cavanaugh. He gets arrested for a murder that wasn't even him. He goes through so much of the show. Like, in the ones we're watching on the Patreon now, we've seen the first 4 episodes of season 1, and like everyone's bullying him, like putting the shaving foam in his locker, writing killer on his locker, like when he cries in the alleyway, when he goes and sits with the rubbish and cries. Oh, bless his little soul. Anyway, we're not talking about Toby, we're talking about Wren. So Toby falls off scaffolding and he then is in the hospital. When Spencer goes to see him, Wren is his doctor, right? So we see Wren again because Wren knows who Toby is. Like, he's like, oh, you're still with the carpenter and, you know, whatever. And she's obviously, he has just kissed Spencer 5 episodes ago. He was kind of hoping that was his chance to get back in with her, but now, you know, if her and Toby are rekindling things, he's like, I've got to nip this in the bud. And so the scaffolding comes down. And when he treats Toby in the hospital, like when he goes in and sees him, he's very, like, standoffish with him. Like, I think he makes it quite obvious that he doesn't like Toby because he obviously likes Spencer himself. I think he says something like, be more careful next time or something. Like, he says something that's a little bit like, that was a little shady. Mr. Kingston, that was a little shady. And so I guess you could take that as like a hint of be more careful next time, don't go near Spencer again, or kind of hinting that he was the one that did this to him, and if you stay away from Spencer, like I've kind of said that you should, this kind of thing won't happen again. You know? You kind of get where I'm going with that?
Try and be more careful next time, huh? Spencer.
And also, you know, Spencer ends up getting Emily to say to Toby that she is seeing somebody else, and he thinks that it's Wren because he knows about the history there. So it all kind of ends up working in Wren's favour, that Spencer breaks up with Toby, ends up kissing Wren. When she tries to go back to Toby, you know, he gets injured again, and Spencer kind of has to break his heart and say that she's seeing somebody else, that person being Wren. So it all kind of does work out in his favour, even though A set this whole thing up. He, like, checks his phone, and then he leaves the room, which just kind of seems like, when you're just watching it, a way to get him out of the room, like, as a character, like, to distract him and send him away. But Spencer then, you know, receives a message from A, so you're kind of like, was that him, like, sending the A message? And then, so then, like I said earlier, another time that he mentions his family is in the 21st episode, and he says, my family has issues too.
Hey, my family has issues too. Hey, just because we don't play high-low at the dinner table doesn't mean we're not just as screwed up. Which
is funny because he literally says to her in season 1, like, oh, I didn't grow up with a family like yours. Then he's like, oh, my family has issues too. It's like, pick a side, babes, pick a side. So yeah, again, that's kind of hinting too that he didn't have the best childhood growing up, or, you know, his family dynamic is strained, or there's a bit of a difficult relationship there potentially. And in this episode, I can't remember if it's in the same scene or if it's a different scene, I can't remember, but he says, I'm a touch of what you call OCD, which, that's me, babes.
All right, I'm a touch what you call OCD.
Whenever I see that, I'm like, just wanting things to be tidy is not OCD, babes. Like, clock in. I'm doing my time on the OCD train. But he says, you know, he's a touch of OCD, and that is kind of, you know, maybe hinting at some of the, because when you look at OCD, you have the more compulsive, like what people tend to think of the washing the hands, doing the light switches, and that kind of thing, like being worried about getting sick, or, you know, catching things and whatever. But the other side of that is the, like, obsessive nature of it, the darker thoughts, and the becoming obsessed with specific routines or things, or, you know, whatever. And so if they're hinting that he leads more to that side, then it could be, you know, A also has obsessive behaviors, is obsessed with the girls, things like that. For me, I'm just always very, not only do I think relying on mental health issues as a motive is lazy, but I also think it is insensitive at the same time. As an OCD girly, I feel like being like, oh, well, Wren is obviously A and he's evil because he said he has OCD. Like, you know, how they do with that, they do that with DID, you know, all those kinds of things. It's like schizophrenia, any of those kind of things, you know, like with Split, or when people say, oh, well, maybe Arya, you know, was crazy and she, you know, had two different personalities and one is A and one is like with the girls and all that kind of stuff. I think Pretty Little Liars, God love her, was not a show that was ready to facilitate those kinds of things in a careful way and in a respectful way. So I'm kind of always wanting to lean further from just throwing those out there as character traits and things that maybe could have been a reason to be A, because yeah, I do think it's a little lazy. I also think that it's insensitive, but it was something that I saw a lot of people bring up on Reddit and things that, oh, you know, Wren says he has OCD, so maybe that is leaning towards that he could have been obsessed with the girls, or he could have, you know, whatever. But for me, then the last time we see Wren is episode 23 of season 2, and in it we get a interaction with Wren and Jenna, which I don't think we ever see them interact again after this. Like, obviously Wren like kind of sees Shauna, like we don't actually see them in a scene, but she ends up like packing up his stuff and mailing it to London for some reason. I don't know. I think Jenna and Shauna, their involvement throughout the show is so weird because they never go full villain with them. I think I would have loved to go full villain with Jenna. They never really pulled the trigger on that, but she's kind of in and around, and she's like, you know, like Shauna's talking to Mona, and then she shows up in Ravenswood, and she was to do with Alison, and then Jenna like has Sydney, and is she A? And like, but they're also never really actually involved in anything. They're just kind of like red herrings, and they're involved in the fire at the lodge, but it's not anything to do with A, like it was just a separate thing that they were there. I don't know. I find their involvement so weird. I think I'm going to do a deep dive on the fire at Thornhill. I'm going to do a video on that and kind of who was there, what happened, all that stuff. But I think I also do want to do a deep dive on like the Jenna-Shauna relationship and like how they were connected to each other, but also to other people in the show, because it's kind of confusing. Because she meets Shauna like when she can see, and then she obviously isn't able to see again, and then Shauna's like, Ezra thinks she's A, but she's not really, and it's all just very like complicated. I feel like, so I definitely want to do a deep dive on that as well. But anyway, I'm very sure this is the only scene that we get with Jenna and Wren, but she says, she kind of thanks him for looking after Toby. You know, she's like, oh, thank you for looking after my brother.
Thank you for looking after my brother.
Glad to be of service.
I bet even a lie would sound good in that accent.
Wren says, you know, glad to be of service. It's kind of like maybe hinting there was more, like he did injure Toby, maybe, and Jenna was in on it. Because I guess like breaking Spencer and Toby up works for both of them. It works for Jenna in that she kind of wanted Toby back. She's always wanted that control over him. And if they break up, she gets Toby back, Wren gets Spencer back. So it would work that they had planned this together. Like, even if it would have been interesting, even if it wasn't A-related. Like, if they'd kind of been like planning this, or maybe Mona had recruited them and was like, oh, do you know, like kind of how Gossip Girl does sometimes, where it's like, oh, do you want this to happen? Like, help me with this and like, I'll get this done for you. Like if Mona had, obviously not asked Mona, but as A, had messaged and said, do you want to get back together with Spencer? This is how you're going to go about doing that kind of thing. I think that would have been interesting if they had kind of recruited both of them, but not specifically for an A thing, just because it benefited both of them to like help her out. Guys, this is my new kitten. This is my son. He's called Dexter Morgan. Mummy loves you. Lights are a bit bright on my sweet pea. Yeah. Don't step on the keyboard, you're gonna turn something off. You say bye to everybody. I love him so much. Here's Purrs. So yeah, Dexter Morgan. Mama loves you. Anyway, yeah, potentially that Jenna and Wren could have been working together. Jenna also says something like, oh, even a lie would sound good in that British accent or something like that. I don't really know why she said that. But I guess it's another potential hint to the audience that Wren is a liar, or, you know, potentially isn't telling the whole truth to Spencer. So now getting into season 3, and I feel like season 3 is peak Wren is suspicious time. Like, this is peak, he is dodgy as hell. They really, I think this season they really like ramped it up. It was less of he is a love interest for Spencer and potentially someone that she could choose over Toby, and it becomes more what's his involvement with the darker themes of the show. So episode 1 of season 3, it happened that night. This is the first time that we find out that Wren is, it's such a weird one, right? Because his connection to Radley kind of makes zero sense. Like, he says, oh, I volunteer here sometimes. Like, I think he says like a couple days a month or something he volunteers there, but it's like, you're always there. Like, he says, oh yeah, like he first says to Hannah when she sees him there, because she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I volunteer here a couple days a month, or, you know, I work here for free, you know, a day out of the month or something. But every time that Hannah goes to Radley, this man is there. You'd think he was full-time working there, because every time we see him, he's at Radley. He's never at the hospital. So it's like, is that a lie? Did he say, oh, I just volunteer here, but really he was working there full-time to try and get information? That could possibly be, you know, a thing.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing here?
I volunteer a few days a month. Quid pro quo.
What?
And also, this is like I said, the first time we ever hear of this. And it just happens to coincide with when Mona was placed into Radley. So it's like, you could have that theory of, did he start volunteering there because Mona was now a patient there and he wanted information, or they were working together, or, you know, whatever that may be. He says to Hannah, because I think Hannah says to Wren, she says, why are you taking Mona's side in this? And he says Mona deserves to be drawn and quartered for what she did. Which, to me, that just feels like a weird thing for a doctor to say. Like, that's such a wild thing for him to just come out with when he's talking about his patient. One, he's talking about his patient. Two, not only is she his patient, but she's also a 16-year-old girl, 17-year-old girl.
Your friend Mona deserves to be drawn and quartered. And given what she's done, I understand you want to punish her.
And, like, obviously, what she did was dodgy as hell. She did hit Hannah with a car, but kind of wild coming from your doctor, and also a wild thing to say to her teen friend as well. That was just very weird. I guess that also plays into people's theory of he's not a real doctor, because he has zero etiquette when it comes to these scenarios, like, whatsoever. For the Wren is a truthers, this is a big episode. So he also says to Hannah that his dad was in a place very similar to Radley. Or I think he might even say worse than Radley. Yeah, I think he says, my dad was in a place even worse than this.
I once threw a bowl of soup across the room when visiting my dad. In a place much like this. Worse.
Your dad was in a nut house?
For years.
That was since Wren turned 10 years old.
He checked out my life when I was 10. Traded our family room for the chaos inside his head. You made your friend down the hall seem downright chatty.
So we don't really know anything. We don't know if he has any siblings. We don't ever hear anything about his mum. But what we do know is that at 10 years old, his dad was sent to a place worse than Radley. One time while visiting his dad, he got so angry and worked up that he ended up throwing a bowl of soup at him, or like across the room or something like that. Yeah, it just further gives us that narrative that he had a very difficult upbringing. He has a difficult relationship with his father. You know, that could be a kind of motive as to why he would have gotten in with the A-team. You know, if he found out that Mona was A during season 1 and he was like, wow, this is super interesting. Like, you know, he's interested in the psychology of, you know, how people's brains work and why they do the things they do, because his dad was in a similar place. So then he, out of curiosity, decided to volunteer at Radley, specifically to speak to Mona and figure things out and maybe start working with her. Like, that, you know, could make sense.
A sense is something rarely mined for mental illness. Trust me, I've spent a lifetime trying.
Hannah doesn't want anyone to know that she is visiting Mona in Radley, and I'm pretty sure that she tells Wren this.
Please don't tell anybody that you saw me here.
Wren kind of purposefully mentions to Caleb that Hannah has been confiding in him. And it seems like, why would you say that? Do you know what I mean? It's like, the only reason you would go to somebody's boyfriend and say, oh, your girlfriend, they've been confiding in me, is to try to make him jealous, to try and stir the pot a little bit.
So you decided to join her this time? Coming here has been a source of great conflict for her.
She's spoken to you about this?
She has. We talked. Please give Hannah my best. Nice meeting you.
So maybe he was like, well, Spencer and Toby are in a really good place. Which one of the other 4 girls can I kind of shift to? And he sees that Hannah is coming to visit him, and that just kind of falls into his lap, this scenario where he can now befriend her instead of Spencer. And then again, it kind of falls into his lap that he sees Caleb. So he's like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to create a rift in their relationship, and then Hannah will continue to confide in me rather than Caleb, which is kind of like, if we think that that's what he did with Toby and Spencer, it then follows that kind of pattern, if that's kind of that's his technique, I suppose. So then in episode 4, we're back at Radley with Wren, which, like I said, he's always there, even though he supposedly only volunteers once a month. And he confesses to her that he extended Mona's visiting hours.
I already got reprimanded by her primary last week for extending your visiting hours.
Why did you do it?
Well, I saw you both together and thought you were connecting.
Thank you.
So we know that Wren is able to do that. Like, he has the authority on the system to change big things like that, like change Mona's visiting hours, get, you know, we see him do the passes for people and whatever. Which also, would they give, I mean, I guess they would because they're Radley, but like, why would they give him so much power if he only volunteers there once a month? Anyway, so he says that he does that. Then the clip at the end is of somebody changing Mona's visitation rights. So it's kind of like, Wren literally says that he has the power to do stuff like that. Then we see A doing almost exactly that, or like something kind of akin to that on the system. So then also in this same scene, A is drinking a vodka soda, or what, you know, looks to be a vodka soda because it has like the lime in it and everything, like how it did when Wren ordered it in the Jenna thing, I think that is episode 2, I think is when he orders that, season 1. So that's kind of why I brought it up earlier, because then we see A drinking that same thing. But like I mentioned before, for me, I think Wren ordered it because Spencer wanted it. Like, that's what she wanted to order, and obviously Peter didn't let her order it, so then he ordered it so that she could drink it. Like, to me, that doesn't really, I associate that drink with kind of them as a pairing, but I don't really associate it with him specifically, because we don't see him drinking it when he's not with Spencer. So, but it makes sense why they would include it as a nod to him, because they, like I said, season 3 really ramping up on the Wren is suspicious thing. Then in episode 8 we have when Wren and Hannah petition for Mona to remain at Radley rather than being sent to a different facility, and he kind of really pushes, I don't know if pushes is the right word, like encourages Hannah basically to speak at the meeting, because he's like, you know, me on my own isn't enough, like they should hear from somebody that loves Mona and, you know, has a personal connection to her.
I'm not the person to speak to them on Mona's behalf. You are.
No, I can't talk to them the way I talk to you.
Then you better be prepared to say goodbye to Mona.
In the episode, it comes across as, you know, he obviously is starting to kind of maybe develop feelings for Hannah. He clearly has a soft spot for her and her situation with Mona. You know, maybe that is because his dad was in a facility like Radley, so he understands Hannah's point of view. That's kind of how the show, you know, frames it, and he wants to help Hannah by keeping Mona there so that she can continue to visit her. But when you flip it around, if he was working with Mona at this time and he was in the process of kind of taking the game away from her and becoming the new A, he obviously wouldn't want Mona to be moved to a different facility, because then he wouldn't be working there anymore. He couldn't get any more info from her or learn things from her. So it makes sense why he would want to keep her there. And we also know that he granted Cece access to visit Mona when she wasn't supposed to be visiting. And, you know, Mona was giving Cece information, or Cece was visiting Mona to try and learn things. So maybe he still wanted Cece to be able to do that. Like, and it was a favour to Cece, to keep Mona there. Like, basically there's a few different ways you could look at it as him having an ulterior motive for wanting to keep Mona there, aside from just wanting to do Hannah a favour.
You can do it.
Your confidence in me is bracing. Potentially misplaced, but bracing.
I don't know, it's weird. Like, if he was a villain, you could kind of phrase it two ways, of like, he genuinely likes Hannah and feels bad that he is tricking her or manipulating her, and is kind of saying, you know, don't put too much confidence in me because I'm low-key, like, a little dodgy. Or he, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really have any theories about this one. I just think it was such a weird thing for him to say. Like, he just words things so weirdly. I feel like they just want to make him seem extra British by getting him to speak, like, weirdly Shakespearean or something in a way that not even me as a British gal understands. Like, what a strange sentence this is. But anyway. And he ends up kissing her in this episode. Or she kisses him because Mona gets to stay. It was like something like that. They end up kissing in this episode.
Oh my god!
We see that he clearly isn't that fussed about Spencer anymore until the later seasons when Hannah rejects him. So you can kind of think, was he always obsessed with Spencer? Or was he just obsessed with the girls as a group? And when he couldn't have Spencer anymore, he moved on to who was, you know, next available to him, which ended up being Hannah. Then in episode 10, Hannah gets a message from A that says, I'm saving you for later. And in this same episode, she obviously like injures her leg, and she ends up calling Wren, or Emily calls Wren, and he comes over and he ends up sewing up, you know, Hannah's leg, like doing the stitches for her and everything, kind of like, so she doesn't have to go to hospital and, you know, get asked questions. She, you know, says, oh, you saved me. So there's kind of that parallel of A being like, I'm saving you for later, and Wren then saving Hannah, like by doing up her leg and obviously not letting her like bleed out or have to go and get caught and get questioned by the police and whatever. So there's kind of that little that kind of parallel. There's kind of that little parallel there, I suppose, between the two lines.
You really saved me tonight.
Anytime.
And again, that shows that he is kind of willing to as we've seen many a time, do things outside of his kind of code of being a doctor. Like, he will let things slide for the girls, like he did with Emily with the steroid cream, like he did, you know, helping Melissa out with the medication for Ian. And like I said, you know, maybe he could have been the doctor that would get Alison birth control without her parents knowing. Ending scene of this one, the like A scene, is a bunch of hoodies on a rail, and you know, A's kind of like spacing them out evenly. So if you did want to link that back to Wren saying he has like OCD tendencies, then you know, you could kind of make that connection of like super neat and everything, and organizing the hoodies like that if you wanted to. Then Wren isn't in this episode. He's not in Misery Loves Company. I think it's the 16th episode of season 3. It's basically it's not when we get the reveal that Toby's working for A, but it's when Spencer finds out that Toby is potentially A, and she sees him in the hoodie. I'm trying to remember now if they really go into why A or like Mona recruited Toby specifically, because, you know, I guess they had the whole thing of he wanted to protect Spencer, so he wanted to kind of go on the inside and that way, and then they obviously had his connection to his mum that they could kind of like blackmail him with and get him to do things for them so that they would give him more information. Maybe they sought him out, you know, just strictly because of that. But if we're looking at this from a Wren perspective, it would make sense that maybe Wren would target Toby specifically, again, knowing that when Spencer found out, it would destroy her trust with Toby and her relationship with Toby. And again, which is exactly what happens, like how it did in season 2, when she ends up finding this out and breaking up with Toby, or, you know, that whole thing happens and she thinks he's died and whatever, she does go back to Wren. Like, she goes out on a date with him. Again, if this was the motive, it works perfectly. Toby and Spencer's relationship is destroyed. She then kind of goes back to Wren for comfort in that. But I guess, like, I don't know. Because also at this point, I'm pretty sure at this point Hannah has already rejected Wren. She basically says, you know, that she wouldn't do that to Spencer, and she wouldn't hurt Spencer in that way. Like, she wouldn't date him because, you know, he's Spencer's ex, and maybe he sees that as like, well, this is officially done now, so I need to go back to Spencer because Hannah's not gonna budge on this. Emily's gay. I don't think he ever has a scene with Aria ever, so it makes sense for him to then go back to Spencer, and obviously breaking, you know, her and Toby up and being able to swoop in kind of makes sense again still. And then I don't know, because Toby was recruited way before that, so it's like, if that was his plan, why would he entertain a relationship with Hannah, I guess? I don't know. It's one of those, like, there's all these evidence and like theories and stuff, but then when you actually like deep it and try and connect them, it kind of doesn't work. Like, it always kind of falls apart a little bit when you're actually like, oh, but actually the timeline doesn't work with that. That doesn't make any sense. You know, then we have is it Hot Water, I think, is episode 20 of season 3. This is again when we see the Wren and Spencer relationship try and like come back up, and I think she like apologizes for using him or something, and he says that he deserved to be used.
I deserve to be used. Mona told me about your breakup. Part of me hoped that with Toby out of the picture, that I finally stood a chance.
She kind of asks him to take her to this thing with Mona, and she ends up obviously, you know, screaming at Mona, and Wren kind of consoles her through that whole thing. So if he was working with Mona, they're on both sides. Like, it's kind of a double agent thing. Like, Mona knows she's antagonizing Spencer. She knows that she can get under her skin. And so she then is kind of like pushing her closer to Wren. And if Wren was on Mona's side, that kind of works perfectly, because then he's who she's confiding in, and Wren can report that back to Mona. And in this Hot Water episode, we get an A message that says, steamy with Wren, steamy with me. I guess just flat out, that could be steamy with Wren, steamy with me, A, because Wren is me. Like, Wren is A. So then the last time we see Wren for season 3, I think it's episode 23. And in the previous episode, Spencer was checked into Radley because she thinks Toby's dead. She ends up befriending Eddie Lamb, and we see that Eddie and Wren have a very strange relationship. There's definitely, you know, tension there. Wren kind of doesn't like that Eddie is talking to Spencer, and, you know, maybe he is worried that Eddie will turn Spencer against him because, you know, he's kind of got her on side a little bit more now. And Eddie kind of says, you know, he kind of basically hints that Wren has a weird relationship with Mona. Like, he says, oh, well, Wren would know about Mona, kind of thing.
Dr. Kingston, he said that she was obsessed with this one.
Well, he would know.
It's kind of like, if he wasn't working with Mona or trying to help her in some way, why would Eddie say it in a way that feels negative? Like, why would Eddie know that they have this weird bond, and why would they even have this weird bond to begin with if Wren wasn't kind of working with her? And also, why would it bother Eddie so much? Like, if it just seemed, oh, well, Mona seems to like him as a doctor and confide in him, why would Eddie be mad at that? I feel like it has to be more than that. It has to be that Eddie thinks Wren is a bad influence for Mona, or isn't helping her, or, you know, is helping her escape, or is doing something dodgy, because it's like, otherwise why would he be annoyed at that relationship that they have? Eddie tells Spencer that he thinks Wren is the one that messed with the visitors' passes.
The person behind the trouble with the visitors' passes? Was it Dr. Kingston?
Kind of know that he was able to do that with the visiting hours and with all that kind of stuff, and he is the one that gave Cece her visitors pass, so we do kind of know that's true. And then Eddie hints that he is at Radley for the wrong reasons, but he doesn't say why. And it's like, why would he say that? And what could that wrong reason be, other than something to do with Mona and to do with the A-Team? Because there's nothing else of interest there outside of Mona being there, you know? And then again, that links back to he started volunteering there when Mona started going there, so that would make sense. Like, he's there for the wrong reasons. It's to befriend Mona or be part of the game. Like, why else? Like, there's no other motive for Wren wanting to go, like, and spend time at Radley, I feel like, outside of the fact that Mona's there.
Trust your instinct. Mine told me from the minute that guy got here, it wasn't for the right reasons.
Then, a scene that I did think was interesting is that, so during this episode, we then find out that Spencer had left Radley. She had escaped Radley, or escaped, just snuck out basically, to go and pick up Malcolm from school and to bring him to the circus. And that's like a night time, and, you know, obviously she's not in her bed when she's supposed to be. And during this time, Eddie wants to go and give Spencer a book, and Wren says no.
Yes, well, that patient needs a rest. You can give it to Spencer tomorrow.
He says, you're not allowed in Spencer's room. He says, are we having the same problem again? So it's like, who has the problem here?
We're not having the same problem again, are we, Eddie?
Is Eddie the one that's there for the wrong reasons and is having the weird relationships with the patients, or is it Wren that is there for the wrong reasons? Like, they both kind of accuse each other of it. But also, what's kind of weird about Eddie is that he never really accuses Wren, as long, at least I can remember, to his face. We only see him trying to kind of poison Spencer against him and kind of have these hints about maybe what could have happened, and like, whereas Wren, the time when we see him kind of go after Eddie is to Eddie, like to his face, and the liars aren't there to see that, so it's not like a show for anybody to try and badmouth him. So it almost makes it seem that Wren's accusations are a little more legit because he's not saying them to somebody else to try and turn them against Eddie, it's just to Eddie himself. And yeah, he stops him from going into Spencer's room, and you're kind of like, why? It's like, does he not want Eddie to go because, you know, he doesn't want him bad-mouthing him to Spencer again, you know, continuing to poison Spencer against him? Is that why he doesn't want him to go to the room? Or is it because Wren's working with Mona, Wren knows that Spencer has snuck out. Wren knows that she's doing this task with Malcolm, though she has to take him to the circus. So if he lets Eddie in, Eddie's going to see that Spencer isn't there, and that kind of foils their whole plan of maybe he would then report that she was missing and people would be looking for her and would see her at the carnival, and the whole A plan would be kind of ruined. So that's like an interesting angle. Like, to me, the ones in season 3, the ones in season 1 and 2, less so. I feel like I don't really buy into those. They don't really make that much sense to me. But the ones in season 3, they really set up so well for you to go back and be like, this was weird about Wren. This now makes sense if he was revealed to be A. But he never is. So now all the shady shit he does in season 3 doesn't have any kind of payoff. Like, you don't know why he does any of that shit. So it's like, did Wren get rid of him? Did he pay him to leave town? Did he kill him off? Like, we never really know what happens to Eddie. Well, we know he's not dead because we technically see him in Original Sin. He's played by a different actor, but it's supposed to be his character. But if you don't count that as canon, because obviously the writers from this show didn't know they were going to end up doing that, so he could be dead in this version of PLL. Like, that would have been crazy. That would have been such a crazy payoff if we found out that Wren was A. Wren had taken the game from Mona, and him and Cece were working together, and Eddie was going to kind of expose the whole thing. He was getting too close, so they ended up, you know, killing him or something. That would have been so good. That would have been crazy. Wren admits to letting Cece visit Mona, but it's like, why would he do that? You know? It's like, one, how did Wren and Cece even know each other? And then when you find out that fucking Cece was a patient at Raleigh this whole time, it makes even less sense, because why would he give a visitor's pass to somebody that is already there? And like, he would know, as a doctor, as a volunteer there, he would know that she was a patient there. So that didn't make any sense. But I feel like they didn't plan ahead that far. So I feel like that's kind of irrelevant. But anyway.
How many times did Cece visit her?
I wouldn't know.
Yes, you would, Wren. You authorized it.
And I was almost suspended for it. She thought she could help her.
Help her with what?
Recover from the psychic wounds inflicted by your late friend Allison.
And also, he kind of says it as, oh, well, Cece wanted to visit Mona, you know, because they were both victims of Allie, which is like, when has Cece ever said she was a victim of Allie? Also, like, her roommate in Philly is like, oh yeah, Allie got her kicked out of school and she hated all of you. And it's like, but that's not true, because she didn't live with a roommate. She lived in fucking Radley. Anyway, I can't get into the plot holes of the Cece is a reality right now. But anyway, that was his reasoning, was, oh, Cece thought she could help Mona. But like, why would he think that? Why would he let her in? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that he would do that. Whereas if he was working with Mona, and Mona was like, oh, there's this older girl that Allie was friends with, I want you to bring her in. Like, I want to see her. Like, this is part of the game. Like, I feel like she would be good for our game. That would make sense. Or if, you know, he had seen, if he knew that Allison was such a big part of Mona's story and everything, and he wanted an in with Mona, maybe he was like, had seen Cece out, like how the girls just saw her out in the brew. And maybe he was like, this girl looks a lot like Allison. If I get her to go in and visit Mona, Mona might think that she's Allison, which is exactly what happens. And so he could then use Cece as a pawn to get more information out of Mona, thinking that she's Allison. Like, that could have worked as well. If his ultimate goal was to take over the game and he wanted as much information out of Mona as he could get, sending Cece in as kind of his own double agent would also make sense. But just the idea that he would send her in for literally no reason, having not known her, like, why would he do that? So then, that's it for season 3. We don't see Wren again until 10 episodes into season 4. And again, like I said, season 3, we were really going in on the Wren is dodgy train. The same thing with season 4. Like, we are still locked into this man is aligned with A, knows about Redco, is like in on this somehow. But nothing ever happens with it. Like, it never gets paid off. And I don't know why they laid all this groundwork in season 3 and 4 to be like, this guy's dodgy as hell. And then nothing came of it. just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, is it Hannah? I can't remember. Someone goes into the police station and we get a glimpse of their like murder suspect board type thing. And it has, you know, obviously pictures of everyone, Spencer and Arya and, you know, Ezra and everyone's on there. And Wren is also on there. And he's down as Dr. Kingston. So that's like an interesting choice. Like, I feel like with the set design, it seems like everything would be purposeful. And it doesn't say Dr. Kingston, it says Dr. Kingston. Like, Kingston isn't in quotation marks, it's only Doctor. So it's like, is that their way of saying he's not a real doctor? Like, they know so, but why were they not arrested for malpractice if they knew he wasn't a real doctor? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But I did think that was like kind of an interesting little note that it does have the little quotation marks around it. In episode 10, this is like, I would probably say the biggest episode for the Wren is a theory. Like, so much shit goes down in this episode. So it kind of starts off with Wren talking to Mona, kind of like interviewing her as he does as her doctor. And he says, oh, you know, you used to be honest with me. You know, we used to talk and you used to be honest in these conversations. And she says, that was before I realised you were a liar and where your allegiances lie.
I'd like you to think about whether you're going to be honest with me.
Why would I ever be honest with you?
You used to be.
Well, that was before I realized where your loyalties were.
But I thought we'd done a good job of establishing a sense of trust while you've been a patient here.
That was before I realized that you were keeping secrets from me.
And I think how you perceive this scene and this interaction with Mona and Wren depends on how you view Mona in this scene. You know, at this point, she's back in Radley because she has confessed to killing Wilden for Ashley, for Hannah. She's done this for them. And she kind of wants to be in the group now with the girls. So depends if you believe that. Do you believe that Mona is nice now? She is genuinely trying to help the girls and whatever? Because if that's true, when she says, I know where your allegiances lie, she must mean with A, or somebody that's out to get the girls, that's out to get them, right? Because when she was, say, being honest with Wren and was talking to him more in season 3, she was still bad, Mona, then. Like, she was still in with A, still trying to, you know, work with A. So it would make sense that she was more open with him then. But now, if she's changed her tune, she wants to help the girls, she knows that Wren is dodgy, then she's not going to confide in him because she's like, you are with whoever's against us, right? I'm really hoping this makes sense because it sounds so convoluted when it comes out of my mouth. Or you can interpret it in that Mona still has ulterior motives and is still out to get the girls, in which when she says, I know where your allegiances lie, she's talking about you are on team Hannah, Spencer, you know, whatever. You are with them, your allegiances lie with them, you want to help them, you don't want to help me. It kind of depends how you want to see it. Do you see it as she's saying, you are on the A team, you're against us, I'm not going to talk to you? Or are you seeing it as, you are invested in the girls, you obviously love Spencer, you were with Hannah, you don't want anything to do with me because it's me versus them? Just depends how you interpret that scene, to be fair. One of the big pieces of evidence is that Wren misspells diagnosis. And he spells it as diagnosis. He misses the G in diagnosis.
By the way, you forgot the G in diagnosis.
And again, this plays into what we've talked about a few times now, which is that Wren is not a real doctor, and that he is kind of lying, and yeah, he's able to kind of blag his way into this job and everything, but he isn't a real doctor because what doctor doesn't know how to spell diagnosis is basically what they want you to think. And also in this episode, which I didn't really see people bringing up that much, but was something that I noticed, is he then goes to Veronica and says, you know, I think Mona is going to turn the tables on you. Like, I don't think you, you know, basically just watch out for Mona.
I'm here to warn you about Mona. She's a dangerous person. And she hasn't forgiven your daughter or her friends despite what she says.
Which again, completely against his code of conduct, but as we've seen, he doesn't seem to care. But again, I think that is almost like a point in the camp of he isn't a real doctor. Because when Veronica says that to him, she says, you know, you could lose your license for sharing Mona's information with me. Why are you doing that? Like, he does not seem fazed. And is that because he isn't a real doctor, so he doesn't have a license to lose?
You know you could lose your medical license for telling me this? She's still your patient, isn't she?
She is.
If Wren had been working with Cece at this point, he would know that Cece killed Wilden and that Mona did not. So he knows this is a lie. He knows this is not true. You did not kill Wilden, because he knows who did. He knows it was Cece if they were working together. So it makes sense that he would be pushing her for information, trying to see what she knows. Does she actually know that it was Cece, or was this all purely to just get Ashley off the hook? Because also, if he was working with Cece, he wants Ashley to go to jail, because that's A's whole plan. So Mona then throws a spanner in the works by confessing. So he wants to get to the bottom of, why did she confess? This has messed with our whole plan. When Hannah goes to Wren and questions him and says, why did you let Cece visit Mona? After that, he immediately rings someone and is like, we have a problem. Well, who the hell was that? Like, what is this problem? Or we never fucking find out, because they never talk about Wren again. But yeah, who was this? Because potentially he could have been ringing Cece. You know, because what is the problem?
Thank you.
Hi, we have a problem. I'll take care of my end. You take care of yours.
Hannah asking him about this and like asking about Cece, why is that a problem? Unless he's trying to help Cece cover up that she killed Wilden. He's like, well, if Hannah's questioning Cece, maybe she's going to become a suspect and I need to warn her and I need to say we have a problem. That makes sense. Like, this is why in my version I made it that it's Cece and Wren together as A, because they lay so much groundwork for that to be the case. Because now that he's not involved, who was he ringing? Why did he care? You know? Oh, anyway. And again, back to what I was saying of, oh, he only volunteers here a couple days a month, you know, whatever. He's always fucking there. And in this episode, he says to Hannah, oh, I just got done with a 72-hour shift at Radley. You just got done doing 3 straight days at Radley. Not to mention, we've seen you there. Like, every single time we see you, you are there. So it's not just a couple days a month, because that doesn't make any sense. You're always there, babes. So yeah, then when Wren goes to Veronica, I'm all over the shop, but I hope you're following along. When Wren goes to see Veronica, he says, Mona still hates the girls. He still hates the liars. You know, she is going to turn the tables on you. She still hates them. She's going to turn the tables on you during this case with Ashley Marin. Because obviously Veronica at this point is defending Ashley. So he's going to her to give her a heads up about this whole Mona thing. But this is literally a lie. But this isn't true. Unless, you know, they're like, oh, well, she told him off screen or whatever. But she doesn't tell him anything. And we know that this is, like, she did this for Hannah, as far as we know. We don't see any reason that she is lying. There's no hint to us that this is all part of a bigger A plot, that she actually is trying to get Ashley into jail. Like, there's no hint of that. So where does that come from? From Wren? Why is he telling Veronica, Mona hates the girls still, Mona's gonna turn this all around on you? Like, he literally says that for no reason. Like, it comes out of fucking nowhere. Because then his conversation with Veronica prompts her to then go and visit Mona. And Wren uses this, leaves an anonymous tip with, you know, the police or whoever it is, and says, Veronica went to go and visit Mona. That's, you know, against the ethics, that's against the rules. And he gets Veronica removed from Ashley's case, from being able to defend Ashley. So when you just look at the facts and the events that happened in this episode, Wren is trying to get this Mona thing thrown out. He is trying to make it so that Ashley goes down for this murder and doesn't have Veronica defending her. Why? Why would he do that? Unless he was working with Cece. Cece wanted Ashley in jail, 1, because it would obviously hurt Hannah and would hurt the girls, but 2, because she was the one that killed Wilden, so she needs somebody in jail for that, so she cannot be in jail for that. It makes sense. If Wren was working with her, it makes sense why he is also trying to, that is the goal, if he's not working with her, why did he do all this shit? Like, why?
Someone made an anonymous complaint to the court. They're accusing me of obstruction of justice.
I was beginning to suspect a confession was coerced, but yeah, I was shocked when I learned it was my former mother-in-law.
Then, again, one of the big Wren is A things, which is the fact that this doesn't get resolved makes me so angry. Like, oh my gosh, I want to, maybe I should do a video of like, if I could sit down with Marlene King, these are the questions I would ask her, because this would be one of them. Why was Wren drawing this picture? Why was Wren sitting down and drawing a picture of a mother, father, daughter and son on a farm? Because then we end up at the Campbell farm, we see this home video of, well, 2 sons, the daughter and Kenneth and Jessica. That's basically what he was drawing. Why was he drawing that? But the thing that doesn't add up about this as well is that the boy seems to be younger than the girl in the drawing, which doesn't add up with the, you know, it doesn't add up with the Charles Allison thing, because Allison is younger than Charles, so that doesn't make sense. I mean, what if it was like, walk with me. What if this picture is his parents, him, and Cece? Like, what if Cece was his older sister and that was the connection that they had? And then, you know, she got involved with Allison and all this stuff, and they together wanted to find out what happened to Allison or something. So they started working together. He then went into Radley, you know, undercover, pretended to be a doctor. Like, that would kind of make sense. That could have worked as like a motive. Or it could have been Jessica, Bethany's dad, Bethany, and this son that we never knew about, which maybe could have been Wren. Like, but then that wouldn't make sense because Bethany's like the same age as the girls, so unless she's not. I mean, we always assumed that she was, and I guess, and like Jessica was literally like, oh, it's just the yellow chop, take her away. So I guess there could have been a world where Bethany was a little bit older than the girls, because also she's, you know, seems not that much younger than Cece when we see them together in the flashback at Radley. So maybe they could have had that Bethany was actually older than we thought she was, and she was Wren's sister. That would have been super interesting if, you know, because they said, oh, you know, like, my dad was in a place like this kind of thing. What if that, you know, he was in a place like that and he passed that down to Bethany, who obviously ended up going into Radley. Jessica had an affair with Bethany's dad and was trying to befriend her. Like, you know, maybe that was the same thing with Wren. They had, you know, he had 2 kids, so Jessica tried to befriend them both. And like, then when Bethany was killed, they didn't know what happened to her. Like, she was missing. So maybe Wren was trying to figure out where his sister went, and that was then he found out, you know, maybe it was something to do with Jessica. Jessica has this daughter called Allison. Allison died the night that Bethany disappeared. That's weird. He starts working at Radley to try and get more information about Bethany and Jessica, because she was on the board, and, you know, maybe he recruits Cece because Cece was friends with Allison and he wants to know all of this, and he is like, oh my god, Spencer, like, she was friends with Allison, she could be my in to get more information, and maybe find, like, ask her about what happened that night or whatever. Like, that would have been really interesting if we'd done that Wren was trying to avenge Bethany, and like get revenge on Jessica and everything for kind of ruining their family with the affair. And that's why he draws this picture. I don't know, guys. I really am just like yapping and rambling about this. I'm like getting ideas for theories like as they come into my brain, and so I'm just sharing them with you without having like written them down and thought about them properly. Because there's also a horse in this photo. So what if the horse in this photo is Custard, the horse that Jessica gave to Bethany, and Wren knows about this horse and knows that she did that, and you know, the barn that then Spencer and Emily go and visit, Wren would know about that because he had been there with Bethany and, you know, the horse and everything. So he locks them in there, and obviously that's when Spencer gets injured and whatever. Like that would kind of make sense, I guess. Him colouring in the coat red. Like, what do you mean there's never a excuse for that? Like, there's never a reason he does that. Like, that literally says to us as the audience, Wren knows who Redcoat is, or Wren knows about Redcoat's existence. Or he just coloured the coat in red as a coincidence. Like, shut up. And Mona insults his drawing in this same episode. So it kind of hints to us that he drew this picture. It's not, you know, that he just happened to colour it in. Like, no, he drew it. So where did the inspiration come from if this wasn't a memory or a story that he'd heard from Mona? Or, do you know what I mean? Like, where would this idea for this come from? And why would he colour in the goat red? I just don't...
Tell your artist to take a class, because this looks like Norman Rockwell sketched it with his teeth.
This, to me, season 3, season 4, like I said, all of the evidence towards Wren being A makes so much sense. Like, all of this evidence, if you were to look back, if he was revealed to be A, you would look back at these scenes and you'd be like, oh, of course, look, he was drawing the red coat, of course he knew. But then because he isn't part of the reveal, you look back at this stuff and you're like, why the fuck is he doing that? And also on top of that, while he's drawing this picture, he says, he's talking about it on the phone, and he's like, well, yeah, like, I got my potential mother-in-law, you know, dodged a bullet there, like, and whatever. And he says, well, you can't trust anyone. As in, you can't trust him? Like, you can't trust anyone, you can't trust me? Like, who is he speaking to on the phone? Like, if it was Cece and he was part of this whole A plan, then it makes sense. Or if he was talking to his dad, you know, like, and his dad, he was like, you know, you son, like, you need to figure out what happened to Bethany, like, she's been missing, like, or if, you know, his dad, like, if he had been in a place like Radley, but then he had gotten out, and then everything that happened with Bethany, like, pushed him over the edge again, and he went back into Radley, like, he's trying to avenge his dad and Bethany, like, who is he speaking to on the phone? Who is he speaking to on the phone? Oh! So many good, like, ways that this could have played out, and they didn't take any of them.
Well, it just goes to show, you can't trust anyone.
Do you like the zipper? Okay, so then in episode 12, Shauna is in Wren's house. I mentioned this earlier. And she, like, helps him ship his stuff to London. And she the way she explains it is she says, oh, well, I just saw this ad in the paper and I just, you know, wanted extra money. But we already, like, then we know that she is connected to Ali. Obviously, she had a ulterior motive with Jenna and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, why would she... Like, what are the chances that she would just happen to respond to Wren Kingston's advert? I feel like there should have been more to that story, and there never ended up being anything. But to me, it always seemed like, oh, well, she was doing it to get information, or she was doing it to help Wren out, or, like, because she knew him, maybe, or, like, knew more about the situation than she said that she did. And then also, straight after this, when we see her at the house, also she tries to hide from Spencer as well. So if you were just, oh, I just was responding to an advert, why were you hiding then? Like, why were you being all secretive about it? If it was just casual. Again, never explained. And then, yeah, straight away after this, she goes to see Mona. So it's like, it would make sense if Wren had been working with Mona at some point, or Mona, you know, was suspicious of him, or... And so Mona, like, recruited Shauna to spy on Wren or something. It's like, this is what I was talking about earlier, like, how are all these people involved? Why does Shauna care about Mona, and why does Shauna care about Wren, and Jenna and Wren, and, like, everyone's all connected. Everyone that doesn't like the Liars seems to be connected in some way, but they never really say why or how. And then they do actually mention Wren in this episode, because when they find Ezra's lair, they're like, well, A's a guy. What guys do we know? How about Wren? And Arya kind of immediately goes, it's not Wren because he's in the pictures. Like, A is watching him as well. He's in the pictures. But, so that kind of rules him out.
Or Wren. He's been hanging out with Shauna and he's back with Melissa.
No, I don't think that Wren's A. Because A's been watching him look.
But then when we find out that Ezra isn't A, he's just doing the monitoring for his book, it's like, well, of course Wren would be in there. Like, if he was monitoring the girls and Wren was A and he was around, it would make sense that he would be in the pictures, because, you know, that whole theory of, oh, well, can't be him, he's in the pictures, why would A take pictures of themselves? Ezra isn't A, so it now makes sense again why he would be in the pictures. Another thing that I found weird about this is that Wren doesn't appear again, like, after this. After, yeah, I think episode 10, the episode that is like, Wren is dodgy, Wren is something to do with this, he does not appear for the rest of season 4, and I think any of season 5. So it's like, why are you setting him up so heavily to be really involved in this and then he's just gone? I don't know if maybe, I don't know, maybe Julian had something else that he was filming. Like, I know he did his show, like, Hand of God, I think. I don't know if it was around the same time. But I don't really know why he then just left and we didn't see Wren again, because it seemed like, well, they're obviously including him because he's important, and then he just disappears. So that was a real weird one, that he just suddenly moves to London. And again, they never say why. I guess if you wanted to link it to him being A, he could have moved to London to kind of get suspicion away from him. You know, if he thought, oh, well, if people really start digging, they're going to find out the stuff I did at Radley. They might find out that I was helping frame Ashley for murder. So I'm just going to dip and move and leave the rest of the A stuff to CC for a while, maybe. One that I also saw is episode 14, Love Shack Baby, when they go to Ezra's cabin. When Ari takes the girls to Ezra's cabin, there are oars in there, in the cabin, and people were like, well, Wren rode for Oxford. He literally says that he rode for Oxford. So, oars, rowing, Wren is A, or Wren owns the cabin, or he was, you know, in cahoots with Ezra or something, or they owned the cabin together, I don't know. For me, I think this is a stretch. This is another one where I'm like, guys, because there's also ice skates in the cabin, and sleds and all kinds of shit in there, so it's like they probably just put a bunch of sports stuff in there just to fill it up, just to fill up that storage room. Like, I don't think the oars are significant, unfortunately, guys. I am sorry. That to me feels debunked. Another thing that I saw people kind of like theorizing is that the cabin, Ezra's cabin, was actually Wren's, and people were like, oh, well, Ezra says he's looking after it for a friend, so maybe that friend was Wren because Wren had recently left town. But I was always under the impression that this cabin was Ezra's, because even if he says, oh, it's a friend's or whatever, that could have just been a lie to tell Arya, like, so that she wouldn't think it was his lair or anything, because he literally uses it as a lair. So maybe he thought by telling her it was a friend, that would make it less suspicious. But yeah, I was always under the impression that it was his. And like a whole season later, Ezra still has the cabin. He takes Mike there. Like, when Alison's having her trial, he literally takes Mike there, like, to get away from the press and everything. So, and in that episode, Arya says, can you take Mike to your cabin? So I'm like, I think it is just his cabin. I don't think there's any kind of like secret behind that. I think it was kind of always intended to be his, so I don't think that it is Wren's. But the idea of Wren and Ezra actually secretly being friends is something that I kind of wrote into my Wren reveal in my How I Ended Pretty Little Liars video. So I do like that concept of them having met before. And going back to Shauna though, because I just remembered this. I think she also says like, oh, he asked me to be discreet or like something. Like she's like, that's why I was hiding. But I don't know, that whole thing seems so weird. And then at the end of that episode, A is kind of like mad at her and kind of basically tells her not to come back to Rosewood by taking her to the Rosewood population sign and basically telling her not to come back. So that kind of seems like, oh, Wren as A hired her, asked her to be discreet, then she's going and she's airing out his business by telling, you know, that she did this job for him. And so because of that, he's mad at her and says, you need to leave Rosewood. Like, I literally asked you to be discreet and you went and told somebody. So then, going into season 5, in the episode Bloody Hell, episode 21, I think it is, Spencer obviously goes to have her interview, I don't know where, I think at Oxford maybe or something. She goes to have an interview at a university then she ends up staying with Melissa and Wren in London. But also, it just felt a bit weird that he wasn't there. Like, we obviously see Melissa, which I guess kind of makes sense because Tori DeVito I think had been in other episodes or was going to be in other episodes of season 5, whereas Julian was not. Like, he hadn't been in all of season 5, and so I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't want him to come back just for a cameo. What do you think? Do you agree? Wouldn't have been worth it, no. So yeah, it wouldn't have been worth obviously casting him for season 5 just for that, just to be like, oh, he lives here too. So I get why they didn't do it, but I guess it still is a little suspicious in the grand scheme of things. Like, oh, Spencer's thing gets sabotaged and Wren, you know, kind of miraculously isn't there at the scene of the crime. And also, just if we're talking logistically here about the blood that is obviously in Spencer's bag and then that explodes, there's no way she would have gotten through security with that blood in her bag. There's literally no way. Someone would have had to have been in London to plant it. Wren? Like, he could have easily, if he was in the flat, have put that blood in Spencer's bag before she left for her interview. Because otherwise, how does it get in there? Like, there's literally no way. Because, one, it broke so easily in her bag, it can't have been in there more than a few hours. But 2, she would have noticed it before then, or her bag would have been stopped in the security queue. Like, if we're talking logically here. So it must have been planted in London, which again would make sense if Wren was helping Cece. And once she finds the blood, she's obviously terrified and she ends up, you know, fleeing London, going straight back to Rosewood to be with the other girls, which again would make sense. Cece would want them all together for the trial because they all then get arrested together, and they then are able to have takes them to the dollhouse. So even if Wren was no longer like he had done his part and then was ready to flee, he fled to London, he was like, I'm done with this A thing, like, Cece, you're on your own. It kind of makes sense that maybe Cece called in this last favour from him, like, Spencer's going to be in London, I need you to get her back here to Rosewood so that she can be arrested with everyone else and I can take them all, kind of thing. Because can you imagine if Spencer hadn't been there? Because that was what Veronica wanted. She wanted her away for the trial. So if then Alison's ruled guilty and then it's like, arrest all the other ones, like, that whole scene would have just been Ari and Emily and then them figuring out how to fly and get Spencer and all the politics of that. Like, that wouldn't have worked. So Cece needed her back in Rosewood with the other girls. Hence, she asks Wren, will you sabotage her interview for me? One of the things that I saw quite a lot was that people felt that the dollhouse had similar artwork to Wren's apartment. For me, I feel like this is a stretch because when we see his apartment, we see it in the 21st episode of season 2, like back when she was, you know, kind of like depressed about Toby and she was kind of having a rebound with Wren and she slept over. That's when we see his flat and we see all the decoration in there. When Spencer goes to his house in season 4, obviously it's empty. There's like one poster there, and that's it. So I guess you could say that the writers looked back at how they decorated Wren's apartment 3 seasons ago and then purposely made the dollhouse kind of look like that, but I don't know. I don't really buy that one. But the, you know, kind of examples of this is he has a poster thing of 3 skeletons, which would kind of make sense because obviously he's a doctor. And then there's, in the dollhouse, there is a thing of 3 skeletons, but it's more of a cartoony, like, kids version of that. Then we also have that he had a Love Thy Neighbour poster. And in the dollhouse, there's also a Love Thy Neighbour poster, but again, very different style. So those were the ones I see mentioned. When I looked back, he had the popcorn poster in season 4, like when he's packing up. So I was like, well, you know, Charles did have like a movie room, I guess, kind of thing. So you could link that to the popcorn poster, maybe. So yeah, then kind of going into season 6, obviously we've done, you know, the dollhouse, things from that. I guess you could say that the dollhouse having a morgue feels very Dr. Wren, like that feels very him, you know, kind of having a morgue. The morgue always kind of felt a little bit out of place compared to all the other rooms, you know, they were just recreations of the girls' rooms, and the games room felt very like childish and things, and obviously the movie room, like it felt a lot like a house. So then to have a morgue in there felt really out of place. But obviously, like I said earlier, way back in season 1, season 2, like he would have access to a morgue, so it kind of makes sense. Maybe he would want something more medical in there in the dollhouse. And also then being chipped, again, you know, a procedure that potentially he would know how to do, having been a doctor. In season 3, he talked to Hannah about ambiguous loss, which is like when you lose someone but they're not really gone, and people were like, oh, maybe this could refer to his identity as Charles dying with the fake grave. So he was kind of like mourning his old life and now he has a new life as Wren. So I did think that was kind of an interesting theory. And then going like post time jump, obviously AD's whole thing is trying to avenge Charlotte's death, which if Wren had been working closely with her pre-time jump would make sense as to why he's like going after the girls and trying to get justice and find out who killed her. And again, with that, you know, you could have him be related to her, or you could have that he fell in love with her and that's why he's so desperate to find out who killed her. Or again, it could just be that they worked together for so long and now he wants to start the game up again now that she's gone, kind of as like a homage to her. We also have that Hannah sends a text very early on in the flash forward asking AD if she knows who they are, and they respond with yes, but this isn't true because AD was Alex Drake and nobody knew Alex Drake. So why would they say yes when it's like, do we know who you are? But obviously Wren knows Hannah very well, like Hannah knows him, so that would make sense for him to say yes. But yeah, no one knew who Alex Drake was. I guess the show writers kind of justified this by saying, well, you know Spencer, like, you know my twin, you know what I look like, kind of thing. But I don't think Alex and Spencer had swapped places at this point, so Alex hadn't interacted with any of them, so it doesn't make sense. Whereas with Wren, they all know Wren, so it makes sense for him to say yes. And like I said, it's kind of doubly significant with Hannah asking, do I know who you are, because they had their fling in season 3. Then in episode 17 of season 6, we see a flashback of Melissa telling Hannah that Charlotte had called Wren, and she knows, I can't remember which way it is, that Charlotte said to Wren, Melissa killed Bethany. And it's like, why would he do that? Like, why would she call him if they didn't already kind of know each other and they had like an established thing? Why would Charlotte want to kind of ruin Melissa's relationship with Wren? Again, just kind of linking back to maybe that they did work together. He is avenging her death now, sort of thing. And also I noticed in the 12th episode of season 2 that Wren actually says the phrase, we all come with baggage. And obviously the title of this episode is We've All Got Baggage, so. Again, I think I may be stretching with that one, but, you know, we go anyway.
We all come with baggage.
Then lastly for season 7, the voice that we hear on the phone, so after Elliot has died, we hear a British voice on the phone. And, you know, rather than that being a voice changer or trying to mimic Elliot's voice, that could have just been Wren, because obviously we know he has a British accent, or potentially a fake one, if he's not a real doctor, who knows. Then in Can You Hear Me Now, the 4th episode of season 1, Wren refers to Spencer's house as the House of Hastings, and this is what Spencer's house is actually labelled as on the board game that obviously AD sends. It says House of Hastings, that's what it's labelled as. I'll have to go back and check, but I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone. Like, I don't think it says like House of Montgomery, House of, you know, Marin or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that it's called that specifically when that is what Wren called it. And then in the 13th episode of season 7, obviously Hannah is sent that life-size doll of herself, and it's like stitched up, and she has to, you know, like cut it open to get the dress out. So that again feels very surgical, like very, very Dr. Wren. For that to have been, you know, that's a very elaborate thing, and to make the incision and the stitch and everything. Maybe this is something that he helped with. We kind of don't really know the extent of how much he helped Alex, so maybe that kind of just does make sense in general anyway. Then when we go to obviously Arya being recruited for the A-team, it could have been similar to if he had a role in recruiting Toby for the A-team, right? Because if he is trying to get Spencer away from the people that she loves, and his end game is maybe to have her back, then it's kind of established throughout the show that it's Hannah and Emily, Spencer and Arya. Those are kind of our strongest bonds. So AD picks Arya specifically because they know it will hurt Spencer the most out of all of them. Kind of making her feel like she had no one. So then again, like with whenever she would break up with Toby, she would go back to Wren, but there was no Toby at this time, so they couldn't do that. So instead they went for Arya, again maybe hoping that she would confide in Wren, who she hasn't seen in 5 years. I don't know, like I said, it's all very loose logic around here. Maybe Wren still wanted to be with Spencer, but he needed to verify first that she didn't have anything to do with Charlotte's death. Because he obviously had, you know, if they'd been working together, he would have had this loyalty towards Charlotte and have cared for her, and couldn't be with Spencer if he knew that she had something to do with Charlotte's death. So maybe that could have been the motive for why AD wants to know so badly who killed Charlotte, and if it was one of the girls. Then we obviously have, you know, Alex says that he was going to come back. You know, obviously we see in the flashback, he's like, Spencer, and he kind of, he obviously falls in love with Alex because she looks like Spencer, and he can't have Spencer, right? So we then, you know, she says that the plan was he wanted to come back to Rosewood with Alex. She was going to take over Spencer's life, and then they would be together. It would just be, oh, Wren and Spencer rekindled their romance and whatever, right? So it seems like what he really wanted was to be in Rosewood with Spencer. Like, that was what he wanted, and Alex was kind of his roundabout way of being able to do that. But I think what would have been interesting instead is for, instead of her killing him, is Wren killing Alex. Like, imagine the tragedy of that for Spencer, like knowing she had a twin, or even meeting the twin, and then Wren kills her. Like, if they were kind of a double act thing, and then Wren kills her and, you know, professes his love for Spencer and says, you know, I only dated her because she was the closest thing to you, but it only made me miss you more. And, you know, when Alex said she was going to kill you, I couldn't let that happen, and so I killed her so that we could be together, like, you know, him and Spencer. Kind of like he's loved her from the beginning. Like, that would have been so interesting, because it's a character we've known since season 1, like the roots are there, the lore is there for him to have been like, oh my god, it would have been so good. So then I have a few kind of like miscellaneous things. So we have the text, the beginning of season 1, the beginning of season 3, which says Mona played with dolls, I play with body parts. Obviously Wren's a doctor, so technically he plays with body parts, I guess. Again, it's a bit of a stretch. Other medical things kind of come up in and around A. We obviously have A plants the prescription pad in Spencer's bag, which is Wren's, like it says his name on it. The dentist office with Hannah, like A had to know how to use that, like the gas and everything, and obviously put it in her tooth. Like, that wouldn't have been easy for just anyone to have known. We see a few x-rays throughout the show. We see, you know, like I said, the morgue that they put in the dollhouse, chipping the girls, like Toby's fake body in the woods, moving that there, placing it there, all of that stuff, being able to drug people at the drop of a hat. Because Mona said, you know, she explained that when A killed her, she was given this drug where she was awake and she could see and she could hear, but she couldn't move. And that's exactly what then happens to Jason and Kenneth as well. That kind of drug seems like it wouldn't be that easy to access unless you're a doctor. Seasons 1 and 2, there's a lot of focus on the girls as a whole. Whereas when we switch to the new A in season 3, 4, 5, there's a lot of focus around Spencer, which again would make sense if it was Wren, because he was always in love with her and kind of obsessed with her. It's also kind of hinted at, suggested that Spencer knows who A is. In the Ravenswood episode in Grave New World, Grunwald says, one of you has been touched by the one that Allison fears the most. And it's kind of supposed to obviously be Arya, because at that point we think that Ezra is A, based on the reveal that we just got, but it could have been Spencer, and that she had dated Wren before. Like, that could have also worked. Because also, again, we never find out. We never find out who this was, because she wasn't scared of Ezra. So who was Allison so terrified of? And the reveal, obviously, of that season, of those, well, who was A during that time, is Cece. And aside from just, like, speaking to her, like, no one had been, like, touched by Cece, the one that Allison fears the most. Like, and she doesn't fear Cece. She doesn't even know it's Cece. So, like, I don't know. That quote never made sense to me either. And I think in the dollhouse, when Spencer kind of came, like, face to face with Charles, or Charles was, like, right behind her, Spencer said that Charles felt familiar to her. But that wouldn't make any sense, because Charles is obviously Allison's sibling. So, but if it was Wren, then it would make sense that he, you know, she was like, I feel like I know this person. Like, I've seen this person before.
There was something that was really familiar. Like when you meet a pen pal, or like a cousin, or somebody that you knew when you were really little. I can't explain it. It was just a feeling.
And also, I just think overall, Charlotte being more obsessed with Spencer in those seasons just doesn't make any sense, because, like, why would she care about Spencer? If it was all supposed to be about Allison, wouldn't it be just torturing all of the girls equally? I mean, I guess you could say that Spencer was kind of Allison's biggest rival, but even then it doesn't feel like motive to do all the crazy shit that she does to her. Marlene also said that Big A appeared in the pilot and stated multiple times that we would recognise them and had seen them before, which obviously fits Wren, because Cece wasn't in the pilot, and I guess technically you can say Alex Drake was in the pilot because Troy Belisario is in the pilot as Spencer, but Alex Drake isn't in the pilot, whereas Wren is in the pilot. Like, all of it added up and made so much sense. And like I kind of mentioned before, you know, Wren doesn't have a concrete backstory. It's only small things that get mentioned, like, oh, he said this about his dad. We know he rode for Oxford. Like, these are things that he says, but we never see any proof of this. Like, we never see him talking to somebody from his past, or we never meet his parents. We never meet anybody that knows him outside of Melissa and Spencer. So it would have been so easy to weave in this backstory for him. Whereas with Cece, we kind of had a very established backstory for her. We knew she was friends with Allison. We knew she dated Jason. You know, we knew she went to Cape May. She knew Wilden. She had this roommate that she lived with in Philly. Like, she went to UPenn. Like, she dated Noel Khan's brother. There was all this stuff about Cece that we knew and that we had learned over, you know, specifically season 3, really. So then her having been, like, the reveal is that she was actually in Radley that whole time, and then she was let out, and she was Jason's sister, cousin, like, all that stuff. And then it turns out Mary Drake was her mum, and, like, all of it was so convoluted, and you had to go back and, like, change so much, and so much of what we learnt about her in season 3 now doesn't make any sense. Whereas if you found out that Wren was secretly someone's brother, or he wasn't a doctor, or he moved to Rosewood for these reasons, like, that would make sense, because nothing about him is really that concrete or like that's established. So you would just be learning new things about him rather than having to go back and change everything we already knew about him, like they did with Cece. I also forgot to mention that this video is actually voted on by my patrons. So I've done like a poll over there. I'm going to do more in the future where I put like some video ideas, and then you guys get to choose which one you want to see first. And so I did that, and the Wren is a theory video 1, so that's why you guys are seeing that one today. Potential theories / motives. Wren, people think that, you know, Wren was intended to be Charles de Laurentiis. That's a big one. One of the big things that, you know, a lot of people believe is that this was the plan. Like, he was supposed to be A. That's why there's so many hints towards him. That's why they made him such a big plot point in season 3 and 4. It's because, you know, they said, you see this person in the pilot, all this stuff. Like, the reason it fits so well is because he was supposed to be A. But something happened and they ended up changing it. A lot of people say, and I couldn't really, you know, find a lot of info about this, but a lot of people say that someone guessed that it was, or too many people guessed that it was Wren, and so they decided to change it. There was also a leak, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and people were like, well, they leaked that it was Wren, so then they had to change it last minute, you know. And so, yeah, it does. That stuff to me, like, it's so funny when you look back, because you're like, a lot of it makes sense. A lot of the things they said about A, the things they hinted about A, like outside of the show, you know, Marlene and the writers made sense with it being Wren. The Easter eggs and the little things that we got along the way, like him colouring the red coat, like all of it makes sense for him to be A, and that they were planning for him to be A, but for some reason ended up changing it. Like, to me, that feels like a very plausible thing that could have happened. I guess in terms of like motives why he would want to be A, you know, some sort of twisted way to show his love for Spencer. Maybe he knew Alison and became kind of like obsessed with her, or yeah, he heard about it from Mona when she was in Radley and he wanted to steal the game from her, or he was recruited by Cece, or, you know, I feel like there was so many ways you could have gone with it and it would have made sense. Like, so many different paths, so many reasons that he could have been motivated to do this and everything, and I think they would have been so much more interesting as well than kind of what we ended up getting. Can you imagine if his accent wasn't real? Like, if the whole time we'd known him he had this British accent, he rode for Oxford, you know, all this stuff, and then during the A reveal he's like talking and then like mid-sentence he just suddenly drops the accent and he's American and that's his real voice. The gag. Like, that would have been absolutely insane. That would have been so good if he, yeah, was revealed to be Charles de Laurentiis, or if he was revealed to be Bethany's brother, or I don't know. There's so many things that could have happened for him to have been a fake doctor, for him to have, you know, fled from London, or decided, oh well, if I have a British accent, maybe people will suspect me less. Like, this is such a easy way for me to kind of blend in and for people to not know that this is me, sort of thing. That would have been so crazy. So yeah, the leak that I was talking about is referred to as Drunk Gate. So I did a whole video on Daisy Gate. You can go and watch that, where this person called Daisy, who said that they worked within Warner Brothers, kind of came onto the app and started doing loads of spoilers for the Dollhouse. The moderators from PLL, the PLL Reddit, confirmed that it was real. She had sent them a picture of her office or something, and basically they had, you know, they had verified that she was real and she was telling the truth and all that. That was the first big leak, and I have a whole video about that. I'm also going to do, similar to that video, a whole video on the Drunk Gate leak. So I'm not going to go too in depth into it now because I'm going to do a whole video on that. But essentially, someone claimed that they were a PA on the majority of season 6. They were fired due to failing a drug test, and now they had gotten drunk and they were ready to just spill all the secrets on the Reddit. That's basically what happened. And when they you know, started spilling these secrets and people asked, who's A, who's this, who's that? They said that Charles was Wren, basically. So when, you know, this person started answering questions, they said that Wren was A. Wren was Charles. They were like, this is confirmed, I'm giving you the spoilers, this is what happened. And to the point that Marlene even actually ended up making a post denying that this was true. People kind of feel like this was legit. Like I'd said earlier, everything that had kind of happened in the lead up was kind of leaning towards that Wren was A. So if then there was this big leak and they had to change it, it would make sense why the CC reveal felt rushed, and why there had been so many hints towards Wren that now didn't make any sense. So people were like, right, it was leaked, they changed it. It makes sense. Whether I believe that to be true or not, you will see in my Drunk Gate deep dive, because like I said, I'm not going to get too into it here. Another thing that people, you know, had claimed, which again, I couldn't find a lot of information on, was that they wanted Wren to be A, but they wanted, you know, Wren to be the CC reveal instead. But they ended up having to go in a different direction because Julian ended up leaving the show, which, like I said, we don't see him again after the mid-series finale of season 4. But when I tried to look into it, I couldn't find anything that lined up, like with the filming dates of season 4 or 4B. And like Julian's, you know, I looked through everything. I looked through his Instagram, like, you know, all this stuff. And I couldn't find a reason why he would have been written out, unless it was like a personal issue or something. You know, like I said, he did star in that Hand of God one, but season 1 was filming alongside 6A of Pretty Little Liars, so that doesn't explain why he wouldn't have been in the rest of season 4 and season 5. Season 1 of Hand of God also wrapped on May 31st before Game Over Charles had started filming, between June 9th and June 18th. So again, he would have been free for that if they wanted him, but maybe they didn't want to risk him not being available for it, you know, or if, you know, they couldn't get access to his filming schedule far enough in advance that they would know for sure he would be available in June. I don't know. It's a weird one because obviously Cece was in season 5. I think she was, I don't know if she was in the second half of season 4. No, yes, she was. She's in the second half of season 4, obviously, because we see her and Allie in New York, and she comes back in season 5. We see her in the Christmas episode and stuff. So it's like, if they, like, did something happen in season 4? I want to know so badly. Like, were they gearing up throughout season 3 and the first half of season 4 for Wren to be A? Something happened. There was a scheduling conflict, or Julian didn't want to do it, or something, and that was the reason why they then decided to completely shift from 4B onwards to it being CC. Is that what happened? Like, it's kind of tricky. It's like, who's to know? We will never really know the true behind the scenes of what happened there, but I don't know. I do think that was interesting. Or yeah, was it that too many people guessed that it was going to be him, and so they decided they needed to rewrite it in order to try and surprise the audience? Is that true? I don't know. To me, that seems a little far-fetched. But then also, does it? I don't know. For me, I'm like, I really hope that's not the case. I would hate to think that we could have gotten such better reveals, but we didn't, because they wanted to surprise us. Like, for me, that's the whole fun of it, is it all making sense and us being able to go back and be like, well, there was this clue, there was this. Like, I find it so satisfying to know that you figured it out, and there's no way you could possibly figure out the Alex Drake one, you know? So I would rather it be, oh, okay, maybe it was a little predictable, or, oh yeah, a lot of us did figure it out, but it's because it was written so well and it was hinted at so well, that's why we figured it out, rather than like a, oh my god, that was so shocking. Like, I don't know. I don't want the shock value. I want the quality writing, the quality storytelling. Then, just for fun, I did go onto Reddit and I did a poll, and I asked you guys, should Wren have been A? and 60% of you said no, and 40% of you said yes. So I think that's really interesting. I want to know now, like you guys in the comments, do you think Wren should have been A? Did you think that he was A? Kind of, how would you have written it if he was A? That, I always love seeing how people would have written stuff. Like I said, in my video, I did make him A, so you can go over and see how I would have written it personally. I don't know. I think Wren being A would have been a really great reveal, to be honest. I think he was around enough for it to be plausible. He's, you know, had connections with, aside from like Arya, I guess, like each of the girls. You know, he helped Emily out. He obviously had his fling with Hannah and was very much in love with Spencer. So it does make sense there. Again, he's someone that we would recognise, someone that's been in the pilot, like really was a mainstay in terms of extended cast. I think the story lines up really well. I think a lot of fans also would have been really satisfied with that ending, with that reveal, whether he had been the CC reveal or the AD reveal. For me, I think Mona is the perfect first reveal. Season 2, perfect. Chef's kiss. I think Wren would have been a great season 6 reveal, personally, instead of the CC reveal, or a CC and Wren team. I think would have been a great season 6 reveal. And then for like the big finale, the third reveal, I did have Alison. That was my writing of it. And I just think that would have been perfect. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I wrote it and it's like was my idea that I really liked, but I think it would have worked really, really well. So yeah, obviously you can go and check that video out if you want to, but that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was so long, so convoluted. You guys have been waiting a long time for this one, so I do hope you liked it. And let me know in the comments if you have anyone else where you're like, I really believed this person was A, and I can do a deep dive into that and the evidence towards that person. So let me know in the comments who you would want to see a blank is A theory video. And yeah, like I said, let me know down below, what do you think about the idea of Wren being A? My Patreon, you guys can go and subscribe over there. Like, that is the best place. Like, I love chatting to you guys over there, and obviously the support for the channel means the absolute world to me. So you can go over and do that. Like I said, we're rewatching PLL together, which has been really fun. At the beginning of March, we're going to start the Pretty Little Liars book club, so we're going to be reading the book series together. So that's also really fun. Just kind of like bonus videos and things are over there as well. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you've sat through it till the end, you are such a trooper. And I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.